Mobile and on digital radio, leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 7 o'clock, the match commander on duty the day of the Hillsborough disaster is facing 95 charges of manslaughter through gross negligence. David Duckenfield is one of 6 people to be charged in connection with the tragedy. 96 Liverpool fans died in the crush in 1989, and an inquest jury ruled last year they'd been unlawfully killed. Christine Burke's father Henry was among the victims. He's told LBC it's been a long journey which isn't over next yet.
28 years of the families, the survivors and the fans have waited for this day, and it's finally come today, and I can't believe what we've just heard in there, but hopefully justice will prevail. We'll get accountability, because at the end of the day we've only had an unlawfully killed verdict by a jury. We haven't had justice.
Police say it could be next year before they can give a final figure on the number of people killed in the Grenfell Tower fire. They say around 80 are presumed dead, the majority of whom were in 23 of the block's 129 flats. A police officer who was blinded in one eye during the London Bridge terror attack has described taking on the terrorists. PC Wayne Marks intervened with just his baton after seeing a member of the public being stabbed.
It wasn't until he falls down that I see that the first attacker is standing behind him, and that's the first time I see the knife in his hand. I reach for my baton, I take it out and I rack it. I take a deep breath and I charge the first one.
PC Marks fought with all 3 of the attackers despite suffering head and leg injuries. 8 people died in the atrocity earlier this month. Theresa May is facing her first House of Commons test since losing her majority in the general election. MPs are voting on Labour's amendment to the Queen's speech on lifting the pay cap on public sector workers. Tributes are being paid to Paddington Bear creator Michael Bond, who's died at the age of 91. Actor Hugh Bonneville says it's poignant to hear of his death on their last day of shooting the second Paddington movie. Speaking to LBC in 2009, Michael Bond said the idea for Paddington came from a bear he spotted while looking for a Christmas present for his wife.
I think all bears have a kind of quality which sets them apart from other toys. You feel you could talk to them, and they could come alive if you treated them properly.
The LBC Markets report the FTSE 100 closed down 46 at 73.87. The pound buys you $1.29 and €1.14. LBC weather becoming dry in the southeast tonight as rain moves northwards, a low of 10 degrees, then dry in England and Wales tomorrow, but rain in Scotland and a high of 20. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Tim Humphrey.
LBC Travel, good evening, I'm Ross Powell. Starting on the North Circular Road, there's a lane blocked on the Hanger Lane gyratory roundabout because of an accident involving a motorbike and a car. At the moment, the one lane is partially blocked and traffic is queuing on all approaches. In Acton on the A40, you're going to find slow-moving traffic around Savoy Circus, and there's slow-moving traffic in northwest London on roads heading towards Wembley Stadium as Adele is preparing to play a concert there tonight. In Hampshire, the M3 has a lane closed southbound between junction 5 at Hook and 6 for Basingstoke following an accident. There's very slow traffic there. And at Attleborough in Norfolk, the A11 is still closed off on the northbound carriageway between the junction with London Road and Ellingham Road following a fuel spillage. And just outside Manchester on the M60, 2 lanes are closed clockwise between junction 15 at the Swinton Interchange and 16 for Pendlebury as an accident there is being recovered. The Bakerloo line has severe delays following an earlier faulty train at Embankment. For more real-time traffic updates, go to lbc.co.uk.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
Mr. Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Donald, and good evening, everybody. Well, as we speak, the House of Commons is dividing on a Labour amendment to Theresa May's Queen's speech that's before Parliament, and what Labour are asking for is for the government to scrap the 1% pay cap that is in place for increases in pay for 5 million public sector workers. That means people like nurses. Now, Labour are not expected to win tonight because if they did, there'd be a confidence motion tomorrow in Theresa May and possibly another general election before the end of July. But it does raise an interesting point. You know, it's now been 7 years since people in the public sector have had more than 1% increase per annum. Inflation is up at nearly 2.5%. Interest rates, I think, are set to rise. And if you actually look at what's happened over the course of the last decade, with gas bills, electricity bills rising by double the price of inflation, people on not very big salaries are finding life tough. And certainly if they live in London, life, I think, is very, very, very tough indeed financially. So I think Labour have raised a very interesting point, but we're told by Oliver Letwin and some in the Tory government that if we pay more to public sector workers, it will mean tax increases. And I'm asking you, are you prepared to pay more taxes so that nurses get a better pay rise? And if you think it's a good idea, call me on 0345 6060 973. You might think, hey, hang on a second, I'm taxed enough already, surely we can find the money from somewhere else. Well then, in that case, you can text me on 84850. Whatever your view, you can tweet on @LBC using the hashtag Farage and LBC, and of course you can watch us live by going to LBC's Facebook page. And Chris is fast out of the blocks from Blackheath. Chris, would you be willing to pay more tax to increase nurses' pay?
100%. Not just the nurses. What about the council workers?
Sure.
Nigel, if you think about it, over the last 7 to 8 years, we've been fed this line of austerity, austerity, austerity. How can you expect people to be working for 7 or 9 years and only getting a 1% pay rise each year? And then we've become a society where we only respect the wealth creators and we're not respecting the people that are doing the work. How about the council workers, all the local authority workers and the civil servants that are working so hard that every year the council or the local authority put more and more work on their employees and they reduce the numbers. So you make redundancies. They're not compulsory redundancies, they're voluntary redundancies.
Yeah.
And they say, I start off with 10 people doing the amount of work for 10 people. Then they reduce it by half. So you've now got 5 people doing the work.
So the argument,
for 10
Chris,
people.
the argument, Chris, is that we are spending every year as a country, as a government, far more than we're earning. We've been running massive budget deficits. And, you know, this government, this Tory government, every election they say, oh, we've been prudent, we've been good. But you know what? Since 2010, our national debt, which has been accumulating, you know, way back to the Napoleonic Wars, our national debt has more than doubled in the last 7 years. So the savings, Chris, presumably have to come from somewhere. And, you know, so should we, Chris? Should we perhaps reprioritise? Or is a budget deficit something we shouldn't worry about?
OK, there's a way to do it. Get rid of the contractors, because what happens is the government get contractors in to do the work, and then they subcontract and subcontract and subcontract. So therefore, the money's not going where the money needs to go. So get rid of all the massive amount of managers that you've got in the NHS that don't need to be there. That's how you do it. And for God's sake, why am I agreeing with Nigel Farage? I can't stand you, but I'm agreeing with you. and Nigel, and I was the one that told you that you're a secret Remainer. Do you remember I told you?
I do. Oh, I remember you now. Yes, you confused me so much. You know, after the show, I had to go for a pint because I could barely cope with the line of argument. Chris, I'm actually with you on this. I think that people have seen their bills going up by more than the rate of inflation, way more than the rate of inflation, and I think the idea that everybody was supposed to pull their belts in back in 2010 because of the sheer scale of the budget deficit was perhaps right. But I think I'm with you now, Chris. I think public sector workers have been paying this price for long enough. 7 years is a heck of a long time. And however much you don't like me, Chris, I agree with you. I think we need to be a little bit more generous right now to public sector workers. And Chris in Blackheath, thank you for your call. Chris would be prepared to pay more taxes, but points out, for example, that in the NHS there's been a 45% increase in middle management over the last 20 years, and he thinks there could be some savings to be made there. Gosh, I'd put a ruthless businessman in charge of the whole thing. I really would. Mark from Milton Keynes, would you be prepared to pay more taxes to increase public sector pay, or is that actually a false premise? Could the money come from somewhere else?
It can come from somewhere else.
Okay.
For a start, the Quangos. How much is actually spent on the Quangos? It's at least 200 billion, at least.
Yep.
Then there's the 93 billion corporate welfare. Mm-hmm. Then there's that little thing about publishing the UK EU accounts. Now, I don't just mean the EU accounts that aren't been audited or haven't been audited or externally audited, but it's then that other money that we apparently get that's distributed that then unlocks other money from the UK government. if we start you're just playing with those little numbers.
Or from local government, or match funding, or whatever it may be. No, Mark. I mean, Mark,
Yeah.
one of the obvious things to me is, whilst public sector workers have been kept down to this 1% rise per annum, above costs, the foreign aid budget has gone through the roof. I mean, perhaps we can make savings there, couldn't we?
That, as to say, only amounts to around about 13 billion. When we look at the Quangos themselves, this is at least 200 billion. This is serious money. We never see those jobs advertised for the great unwashed to actually apply for. We don't see the actual lists of how much is actually spent and who they are and what they do.
So you think, Mark, we need a fundamental rethink, basically, about the way we're running through the agencies much of our life in this country?
The handouts. It's just the handouts. They complain about the unemployed. If we break down the actual welfare budget itself, the actual welfare to the poor, as to call it, it's around, let's call it around about 100 billion. Around about 70% of that is spent on for the elderly. Around about 14% on the disabled, around about 11% on housing, and around about 3% on the unemployed, who are the evil scroungers. But then you have these, as I say, the Quangos. It's at least 200 billion. It's more.
Right,
it's
so
more
we can save money there. And Mark, do you think, in principle, that public sector workers are due a bit of a break now?
Yeah, but we need accountability across the whole public sector of who they are, what they do, who contracts from whom.
Yeah, I don't think
this outsourcing and all that lot is not economic.
Yeah, let alone PFI deals on hospitals and goodness knows what else. Mark, you make the point extremely well. Paul on Facebook says, nice tie. Well, those who are following on live stream can see that. My mum gave it to me. Elizabeth says, let's reduce some of the foreign aid, as it seems to be paying for people who don't actually need it in many cases. Well, yes, it's certainly true some foreign aid does go into the pockets of rich dictators, although some, I think, perhaps gets to the right places. Jan says, cut foreign aid. Simple. Ben says, pay cut for politicians. Rizwan says, MPs had an 8% pay rise. Why can't the public sector get that too? Because, Rizwan, then our deficit would balloon even more. Unless, of course, our previous two callers are right, and maybe there are massive savings to be made at all levels of government. Daniel in West Hampstead, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. Good to speak to you.
So, should we be saving money or putting up taxes? Should we even be paying our public sector workers more?
Right. Well, first of all, we should definitely not be putting up taxes, and quite the opposite. They should actually be cutting taxes, because why is it, Nigel, that people like you, very sensible, smart people, and including other economists...
Only on a good day, but go on.
Quite rightly say, if you cut taxes, you raise more revenue. Why are they doing it? The government seems to be completely moronic, and they seem to think that the only way to do it is to put up taxes. It's ridiculous.
Well, there are certainly cases where reductions of personal tax or corporate tax have led to more people either staying in the country or, frankly, Daniel, obeying the law and going straight and paying them. So there are some good examples of that, yes.
Yeah, exactly. And I think when Gordon Brown, in fact, cut VAT from 17.5% to 15%, I think the government raised an extra 2.5 billion. And then, Nigel, there's the tiny little thing called HS2, which is only about 75 billion now, probably going to go to 100 billion.
Oh, that'll go. The cost of that will go up, as all these big projects do, exponentially, just so that we can get to Manchester 20 minutes or 25 minutes more quickly. I don't really understand it. And it'll take years to get to Birmingham, more years to get to Manchester, many more years to go across to Leeds. Have to say, when I travel, Daniel, on the trains out of Euston, going up to the Midlands or the North, I'm struck actually by how quickly I'm in Manchester Piccadilly. 2 hours, 2 minutes, I'm in the middle of Manchester Piccadilly, right in the business district, and I rather agree with you. I think that's a big waste of money.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, Nigel, the bigger point on that point about HS2 is it's frustrating there aren't more politicians like you, genuinely, who understand what people want. People, if there are any politicians in Parliament listening to this show now, people, to us taxpayers, do not want massive, wasteful, white elephant political vanity projects. We want money. We want our taxes put into frontline services, where we really need them.
Well, Daniel, I can tell you that nobody's listening to you in Parliament right now. Not because they never listen to this show, not at all. In fact, I think in some cases they probably really do, and kind of try and hear where public opinion's going, but because they're in the House of Commons, they voted, they've taken their seats again, and very soon we're going to get the result. Right now, you're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC, and it's 7:15.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Google could face penalties over its ranking of search results after being fined a record €2.4 billion by European Union competition regulators. James O'Malley is interim editor of tech blog Gizmodo.
The European Commission is strong enough and powerful enough. It can stand up to these enormous global companies, which, an individual country in Europe might not be able to.
And is in Cardiff.
Google are a company. They're there to make money. Their marketing is their marketing. It's got nothing to do with the EU.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast every weekday morning from 7, only on LBC.
With Hampton by Hilton, now open in Aberdeen.
I've always paid into my pension, but never thought about how it was performing or how much I was being charged for it. That's why I contacted the specialists at PensionWorks. They carried out a pension health check, which found hidden costs and expensive fees within my pension that could have cost me years of lost retirement income, meaning more money for my future.
Let the PensionWorks check your private pension for free before it's too late. Text YES to 83222. That's YES to 83222.
Divorce. It threatens the things you've worked hard for in more ways than you can imagine. Your home, savings, pension, and most of all, your relationship with your children. Don't let divorce cost you any more than it has to. Cordell & Cordell is dedicated to helping men in matters relating to divorce. Call now on 0330 60 60 161 or visit cordellcordell.co.uk. Office in central London. A partner men can count on.
With breakdown cover from the AA, we'll do whatever it takes to make sure your big wheels keep on turning. Our mechanics usually get you going again in 30 minutes. Breakdown cover from the AA, because anything can happen.
Oh, yeah. The high-quality kitchen you've dreamed of at a price well within your budget. That's Room Sense.
That's Room Sense.
This month, all kitchens are half price with a free oven hob and extractor. Book your free home design visit today at roomsense.co.uk.
Quality at a price you can afford. That's Room Sense.
Offer ends soon. Minimum spend applies.
My thing? Popping on the Lycra and swallowing the odd insect. I'm into my cycling, you see. We meet every Sunday morning, 7:30 on the dot. We just planned a trip to the Alps, well, the Welsh Alps, so we need a new bike rack. It's got to keep 4 bikes safe on the roof whilst we plan our Tour de Wales and the car underneath.
Sounds like Ben's thing is a roof-mounted 4-bike car carrier rack. Find your thing on eBay, the UK's #1 online destination for car parts and accessories. eBay. Find your thing.
Are you confused about PPI? At PPI Hotline, we want to give you the facts. There is absolutely every reason to check you had PPI. Even if you think you never have, we can help you find out, as you could be owed thousands. And now there's a deadline. We just need the name of the bank you've had loans or credit cards with, and we'll check for free. So find out now if you're owed by texting WIN to 82222.
PPI Hotline. Text WIN to 82222.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
The first vote of this Parliament is in, and the government have won. They've beaten the Labour amendment that wanted, amongst other things, to end the freeze on public sector pay at 1%, and it's 323 votes to 309, so it looks like the confidence and supply deal with the Democratic Unionist Party of Northern Ireland is working. That's how it seems to me. With me is Theo Usherwood, LBC's political editor. Theo, first reactions to that, please.
Just what we expected. A majority of 14. I don't know what £1 billion is divided by 14, but it's a lot of money for those DUP votes, isn't it?
It's more than the biggest football transfers in the world, so there you are.
Yes, there was a joke earlier on about DUP MPs being worth more than Cristiano Ronaldo, which there were some chuckles in the House of Commons. But yes, we were expecting this. But really, Nigel, this is, Labour lost this vote, but really it's a victory for Jeremy Corbyn, this one, because he's managed to shift the dial. We've seen the government in complete chaos, for want of a better word.
And some change of language from Theresa May, I think, today about, austerity has been the big word for the last 7 years. We've got to get the deficit down. Some, like me, would argue they haven't done very well at that. But there's a change of language, isn't there?
There is, and it's a little... There is a difference in the Conservative Party about how they diagnose their failure to secure that landslide majority that they'd hoped for of 80, 100 plus. And many feel that from speaking to their constituents, and these are Tory MPs I'm talking about, that people were fed up with austerity. They're fed up with pay freezes, pay caps, lack of spending, investment in public services. And the Chancellor acknowledged that last week when he talked in his Mansion House speech, breakfast speech, about people being weary of austerity, that move away from Cameron, Osborne-omics. And now, of course, Jeremy Corbyn laid down a gauntlet, a test for the government, by saying that he wanted to overturn the public sector pay cap. It's been in force since 2012 at 1%. Before that, there was a pay freeze apart from the very lowest paid workers. And he put that test in there. Tory MPs this afternoon behaved pretty well. They weren't going to vote with Jeremy Corbyn. Maria Caulfield represents represents Lewis, former Liberal Democrat seat with Norman Baker. She said, as a former nurse, that many people were very unhappy about it. Andrew Murison, a defence minister under Cameron, said that people were pretty fed up of seeing private sector pay rises when the public sector weren't getting them. And then Jeremy Hunt rounded off, and his language was somewhere in between the briefing that journalists received after Prime Minister's questions, where the Prime Minister's spokesman talked about, bringing an end to this era, the Prime Minister hearing the message of the electorate at the general election, and then this charade that occurred 3 hours later when the Prime Minister's spokesman refused 16 times to say that the policy had changed. One suspects, and the talk is that everybody, the Treasury, Philip Hammond, went bananas when they heard what had happened in Number 10, and that's why at this briefing, so that's why the language changed. Jeremy Hunt, I should say, moderating it, saying in his summing up comments to the House of Commons this evening, let's let the independent pay review body do its job, make its recommendations, then we'll have a look at it, and that would obviously feed into the budget.
But it's likely, is it not, that in the autumn this policy is going to change, isn't it?
But they've got to find the money. That's the big question. You say
that, but we are actually, the government, last year borrowed £52 billion.
More than it took in receipts.
Absolutely. So this idea that £1 spent is matched off by another, I'm not sure I buy it, really.
Well, they've got to find them. They've got to find the dosh, Nigel. There's no way around it. There's no magic money tree, as we were told during the election.
Yes.
So they've got to, and that's the big test, because of course, when it comes to the revenue streams, i.e. the main forms of tax, income tax, Theresa May promising there'd be no significant rises in income tax, VAT, there's a freeze on that. That was the only one.
We're talking about several £billion, aren't we?
Yes, we're talking about several. And then of course, national insurance contributions. We saw what happened when Philip Hammond in the last budget tried to tinker with the figures there, and the backlash on that one.
This will run and run. Every government faces those arguments about tax and spend. But I think I agree with you. I think that Corbyn has already, in this government, changed the policy of the government.
I just look back to 2015 and the lead up to the 2015 election campaign, where Ed Miliband, every time he was in a sort of fiscal straitjacket. He couldn't move, because every time he tried to talk about ending austerity or trying to talk about how you pay for public sector services, he was accused, and the punches landed, let's face it, of being fiscally irresponsible, of spending money willy-nilly. And Jeremy Corbyn has managed to say, well, actually, we do need to spend money. And do it without, we're carrying a large bulk, not the majority of the country, but a large bulk of the country with
The agenda has changed. Theo, thank you very much indeed for that. Well, I'm asking you, should public sector pay go up by more than the 1% cap. I think, as that conversation with Theo shows, the agenda is changing. It probably will. But are you prepared to pay higher taxes in order for it to happen, or is that a false premise? Andy in Cardiff, good evening.
Mr. Farage, how are you?
Hello, I'm fine. So what do you think? Would you pay more taxes?
Two very brief points, if I may,
yes.
Nigel. First one is I would not put taxes up. What I would do is I would look at the reality of the NHS as it currently is. And that is that out of senior managers in the NHS, you've got a 6-to-1 ratio of senior administration managers versus senior medical managers. I would absolutely destroy the PCTs and SHA administrative departments that are growing to be larger than the actual staff in the NHS. Get rid of all the bureaucracy, get rid of all the administration, pay the nurses more. I'd immediately give them a 10 to 20% pay rise after getting rid of the administration staff, and actually having the administration staff based in each hospital instead of in their own private buildings, figuring out ways to spend the budget for the hospital they're responsible for instead of giving staff pay raises. That's the first point.
Yep.
The second point, one of the callers actually spoke about outsource being a mistake. Outsourcing the NHS was seen to be a good thing 12 years ago when the NHS asked for £300 million of extra funding. It was a great idea to say, let's outsource the NHS IT. And remember the National Programme for IT?
Oh, then didn't that in the end cost an absolute fortune, didn't it?
The initial bid just for the core network was in at 600 million. Mm-hmm. Now, that was accepted by the government as the winning bid. 3 months later, that 600 million was 1.9 billion in 3 months.
Yeah. So it's just out of control. I mean, that would not happen in a private company, because if it did, the people who'd put the original price forward would have been tin tack, wouldn't they? They'd have been out the door.
That's why it's wrong, Nigel.
Yeah.
That's why it's wrong.
Yeah.
In the NHS, the only way you can successfully outsource and make a profitable saving is if you have a product. The NHS do not sell anything. They have no income. Therefore, outsource is wrong for them. Yet the government of the day thought it was perfect for them, and that's where it's wrong.
And Andy, who is going to come in and take a completely fresh approach to this, and as you say, get rid of bureaucracy and streamline and find value for money? Do you see some inspirational figure out there that could actually do this?
No, I don't. Unless the current government do it, Corbyn won't. Neither will the SDP. You know, none of them will, because all they see is something to throw money at, and they think they'll win votes by throwing money at it. They play political points against it all.
One day, Andy, one day there's going to be a party that fights a general election on a manifesto of fundamental reform of the health service. We're not there yet, but I do actually agree with your points very strongly. Thank you. Marie in Putney, good evening.
Hello, Nigel. Yes, well, I think the problem is that people think that wholesale reform, we've gone through a lot of wholesale reforms and things only seem to have got a whole lot worse.
Yep.
I mean, I myself, I'm currently on a waiting list for two things, and nothing has moved along in about 9 months, and they all agree it's quite serious. So I don't know what boat other people are in, but things are only getting worse every time they so-called reform things. So anyway, that wasn't what I rung in about.
Go on.
What I rung in about was MPs. I see them as public sector workers of a sort. I don't see them doing an awful lot of work, but yes, of a sort they are public sector workers, yeah? Now, 2015, they got 10%, didn't they, pay rise?
Yep.
And then last year, as far as I remember, they got 1.4%. And this year, I think they've awarded themselves 1.3%. So over the last 2 years, they've had £9,000. Mm-hmm. That's very nice wage increases for doing very little work. And lest we forget, they're actually out of Parliament more than they're in it. They don't sit very long, and then they say, oh, we're working back in our constituencies. Well, I don't see very much evidence of any real work going on.
Do you know, Marie, I've
had zero.
I've been 20 years in this. I've been nearly 20 years as an MEP, and I've seen people who work damned hard in their constituencies and people who do damn all. So it's some and some. Marie, I take your point. You made it very, very well. Some passionate feelings there, that MPs are paying themselves more and more money, and yet the public sector have been stuck on 1%. Change is coming. No doubt the autumn statement will see a change of policy on this issue. Now, just this last weekend, we celebrated Armed Forces Day. And that's not just for people who are serving in the armed forces now, because there are some quite old veterans knocking around who 73 years ago this month were going by land and sea and air onto the beaches in Normandy. And I went back earlier this month to Normandy. There were 100 of them that went back. The London Taxi Drivers Charity generously gave their time and their effort to drive 100 of these veterans back to Normandy, and I had the privilege of being there and being on those beaches and talking to some of that generation. Here's just a flavour of it.
I was the last fella.
And every other man died?
Nobody was seen.
So you're the luckiest man alive, aren't you?
Well, I am.
It must have been terrifying times.
You're so busy doing what you're doing, you don't think about it until afterwards.
You either got killed or you didn't get killed.
And you've lived to tell the tale.
I'm still here.
You certainly are.
Well, you'll hear more of that in a moment, some really very powerful testimony. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 7:30 and time for the news with Tim Humphrey.
The government has won the first vote in the Commons since it lost its majority at the general election. MPs defeated a Labour amendment at the Queen's speech, which called for an end to the public sector pay cap by 323 votes to 309, a majority of 14. One of 6 people facing criminal charges over the Hillsborough disaster has vowed to vigorously defend his innocence. Sir Norman Bettison, who was a senior police officer, is accused of misconduct. Scotland Yard is warning it could be the new year before they can say for sure how many people died in the Grenfell Tower fire. Officers have yet to make contact with any occupants of 23 of the 129 flats in the block. LBC weather becoming dry in the southeast tonight as rain moves northwards, a low of 10 degrees, then dry in England and Wales tomorrow, rain in Scotland and a high of 20 degrees.
This is LBC.
With breakdown cover from the AA, we'll do whatever it takes to make sure your big wheels keep on turning. Our mechanics usually get you going again in 30 minutes. Breakdown cover from the AA, because anything can happen.
Summer's here. Ice cream, barbecues and sundowners. Typical English days out. And the perfect time of year to replace that old boiler. At Swale Heating, our expert engineers can install a brand new A-rated Worcester Bosch boiler, which comes with a warranty of up to 10 years and a year's free cover for the whole central heating system. Subject to survey, conditions apply. So you and your family won't be left in the cold this winter. Visit swaleheating.com for a quote today. Rely on us to keep you warm.
I've always paid into my pension, but never thought about how it was performing or how much I was being charged for it. That's why I contacted the specialists at PensionWorks. They carried out a pension health check, which found hidden costs and expensive fees within my pension that could have cost me years of lost retirement income, meaning more money for my future.
Let the PensionWorks check your private pension for free before it's too late. Text YES to 83222. That's YES to 83222.
History's made at Lord's.
Durham are the champions.
It's Stuart Broad, it's Nottinghamshire.
The Royal London One Day Cup Final takes place at the home of cricket on Saturday the 1st of July.
Gone! It's the glorious Gloucester at Lord's, and they've won it. Amazing scenes.
Experience the drama of a cup final at Lord's, with tickets available from just £30. Search Lord's Final to find out more.
Do you want to improve business efficiency and take control of your finances? With Sage Accounting, you can. Our solutions are easy to set up, intuitive, and accompanied by unrivaled support from our experts. Whether you're a startup or a growing business, there's a solution for you. Sage, accounting for your business journey. For more information or to book a software demo, visit sage.co.uk/journey.
Leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
The 6th of June 1944 is known as D-Day. It's the day when British, American and Canadian forces landed on the beaches of Normandy. It was a massive naval operation. There were over 5,000 floating vessels involved in the operation that day. Thousands of bombers, of course, too, from the RAF and the US Air Force. And as you know, if you've ever seen the film The Longest Day, which is a very good film, it was in places a very bloody and a very difficult day. In other parts, it was somewhat easier. And it was the beginning. It was the beginning of the liberation of France and ultimately of Europe too. So it is, I think, in terms of history and in terms of the lives that we've all led, a massively significant day in our history. But there are still some people alive who were there on that day and took part in that campaign. Their numbers are thinning significantly. But I went across on June the 6th and met up with the London taxi drivers who, out of the goodness of their own hearts, through their own charity, had taken 100 of them back to the beaches. Here's what some of it sounded like.
We're here in the village of Ranville, which on the 6th of June, 73 years ago, was the first village in occupied Europe to be liberated. And it was liberated by the 6th Airborne Division. And believe it or not, there are a handful of men, average age about 95, who were actually here 73 years ago on that day. And every year, this village has this commemoration. And I suppose what we've just done is to celebrate Ranville being liberated, but we're now following a march, and there is a march of the Parachute Regiment, and you can hear the band playing at the front, and they're now going for the rather more serious part, which is a church service, and then to go to the Ranville Cemetery, in which there are a couple of thousand people buried, and for these people, they're going back to look at graves of people who died 73 years ago today, and I spoke to one of them a moment ago, and I didn't want to push too hard. But I said, what does it mean to you, coming back? And he kind of almost cracked up. He said, it means the world to me. So it's very hard for us, I think, to understand emotionally what for these guys this journey must be like. So I'm here with Jim Lang, 1st Battalion, is that right?
I was in the 13th Battalion.
13th Battalion?
The battalion that took the first village in Ranville.
So you were here on the night of the 5th, 6th of June, yeah?
That's right, yeah. I parachuted in at round about 12:30 to 1 o'clock.
Wow.
On the morning of the night.
Yes.
The 5th, 6th.
Yes.
We found out afterwards that we didn't know at the time. But the plane, instead of coming along the dropping zone, it had come diagonally across. What I did notice, when I jumped out, I hit the ground a lot sooner than I should have. What happens, you parachute at about 150 feet, your parachute opens, and then you just glide down then. And, well, my parachute opened in seconds after I hit the ground, so I knew that something was wrong because we hadn't dropped from 600 feet. When we landed, I collected my stuff and got to the dropping zone, and then we waited till the rest of them came, and I think there should have been 40 men there, and there was only 16 of them. So it was obvious something had happened. And it wasn't till a long time after we found out that the plane had never come back. The plane didn't come back to England. You're supposed to drop the paras and then come back home.
Did any more get out after you?
Oh, no.
So you're the last man out?
I was the last man out.
And every other man died?
Nobody was seen. The plane was never seen after. And at the War Office, they were telling people it was probably came down in the channel.
So you're the luckiest man alive, aren't you?
Well, I am.
You must be.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. What is it? I mean, going over, you're a young man. Were you scared coming over about the battle?
I definitely wasn't scared. We had a lot to think about. You know, we've trained for this for 12 months. and it was what we were going over was to do a job. We've been trained for it.
What, so there was no time to be scared?
Everybody weren't shaking in the shoes or anything like that. I don't know, I wasn't.
Amazing.
I wasn't, it's just another job to me, but I knew it was the real thing.
Are you proud of what you did?
Well, I suppose I am, really, yeah.
Well, do you know something? The nation's proud of what you did. It really is. I'm here with Frances Rimmer, and she's just given me a photograph of herself from 1945.
That's right.
I mean, you barely changed, Frances.
Thank you.
Where was this picture taken, and what were you doing?
In Brussels, serving with GHQ 2nd Echelon, 21 Army Group, BAOR, doing the records of the RASC men.
Do you feel sometimes, when this generation, my generation and younger, looks back at the war, do you think we somehow perhaps underestimate the role that women played?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you did do an awful lot, didn't you?
Well, a lot of the ATS, anyway, were on guns, searchlight and radar, and also drove ambulances. I'm not saying in the front, but they did drive them.
Yeah, and there were women flying Spitfires around the country and...
And the WAFs, I don't know what the Wrens were doing so much, but the WAFs were doing on the aircraft. We were the backroom girls.
I mean, I was in the ATS myself, and when I was on the South Coast on D-Day, and they don't think about when the men got across the water. My husband was actually in the Navy in the Channel, but when they got across there, they'd got to be fed, and the ATS baked 85,000 loaves of bread.
Did you?
Not me personally, because that was an anti-aircraft gunner, but I have a friend, and she'll say to me, oh, well, I was only a cook. I said, well, they'd have been preferred to see you than they preferred to see me, because a hungry soldier doesn't march very well.
No, that's right. Now, tell me, you were on anti-aircraft guns, were you?
Yes, sir.
So just explain to listeners what you had to do.
I was what they call a height finder and predictor operator. The aircraft coming in, you got the height, you got the distance or the check that they were coming in, north, south, east, west. You shouted that over to the gunners. The gunners elevated and boom, off they blew.
It must have been terrifying times.
Well, yes, it is, but you're so busy doing what you're doing, you don't think about it until afterwards. And most of the young women, I would say, were round about my age, 18, 24, something like that. And we got over it afterwards.
Amazing, isn't it? People are talking about events that happened 3/4 of a century ago, and yet it's as clear in their minds as if it was yesterday. In fact, it's probably clearer in their minds in many cases than what happened yesterday. It's a generation that is thinning in numbers, and I think their stories do need to be told and do need to be recorded, I think, for posterity. The bit I particularly liked, with all of them that day, said to them all, you know, people who'd run up beaches, you heard Jim Lang, who jumped out of an aeroplane in the middle of the night, were you scared? And they all said no. We had a job to do. We'd been trained to do it, and we were focused just on doing that job. And I think, what would I have been like? Jumping out of an aeroplane at 12:30 in the morning into Nazi-occupied Europe. I think I might have been scared. I don't know. This is LBC. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show. The time is 7:42.
Coming up at 8 on LBC, Clive Bull.
Labour has been pushing for the government to scrap the 1% pay cap for public sector workers. They didn't win the vote in the Commons, but are they winning the argument?
Clive Bull on LBC.
Wake up, it's a beautiful morning.
Get up to £100 trade-in for your old mattress. In the Hans's Bed and Mattress Sale, plus up to £200 extra off our ticket prices. Free local delivery, free mattress protector, even a free pair of pillows. Get a perfect night's sleep with our best ever offers. Hans's Sleep Centres, Beckenham, Bexley Heath, Leatherhead, New Malden and Wallington, and hamses.co.uk. Conditions apply.
When you hear a PPI commercial like this, you think, I wonder if I ever did have PPI. And maybe I should claim with the deadline being announced. And then you think, oh, but I'm not sure where my paperwork is. So you end up doing nothing. Well, here's the easiest thing in the world to do. Just text the word EASY to 60777 and the claims guys will conduct a free search to discover if you ever had PPI. And then you can decide to pursue the claim yourself or get the claims guys to do it for you. Text EASY to 60777 now.
The claims guys.
That's the sound of your MD's jaw hitting the desk when she realises how much Open University degree apprenticeships can improve your workforce. In fact, 76% of apprentice employing organisations say they've made their business more productive. So whether you're bringing in new talent or upskilling existing staff, apprenticeships could be the best investment you make all year. See how good they could be for your business. Search OU Apprenticeships to get an employer's guide.
Leading Britain's conversation, The Nigel Farage Show. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
On the 6th of June, I was there with over 100 people who were veterans of that Normandy campaign, and I was struck by their modesty, I was struck by their humour, and I even bumped into an old friend who I've met several times before, Harry, who's a very young 96 years old. Now, when I first met you in Bromley High Street...
Yeah, that's right.
I said to you, where did you serve?
Yeah.
And you said to me, I had a nice little run around in Normandy in 44.
That's right.
How does it feel coming back here?
Oh, great. You know, just to remember all our past soldiers, you know.
Does it?
And men and...
Come back.
Well,
it must make you feel sad, guys.
It's 70 years, isn't it? Yeah. Now since. Yeah. But you do get that bit of emotion.
Yeah, I bet.
Like, you know.
Now, Harry, tell me, when did you come to Normandy? Whenabouts in 44 did you come?
In July 1944.
July, yeah.
We landed at on Juno Beach.
Yep.
And then we just moved up to Colombes, and we was doing ammunition work, working on ammunition with the Americans.
Some people tell me there was a bit of rivalry with the Americans. Would that be fair?
Well, I don't know. We never see much of it. It was all one.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
All with one aim, really.
Yeah, all
back to the Ardennes, right? Yep. We lost 61 bods in one village, Muir. We're not in American history.
Right.
We won. That's what annoys us. 6 airborne weren't there, but we were there. And
so do you feel Hollywood's rewritten history a little bit sometimes?
We went to the Ross Museum, a lovely museum run by a young guy and his family.
Yeah.
So I said next year I'll bring my jumping smock over 1942 issue, which I did.
Yeah.
It started an English contingent. We were there.
You were there, yeah. Well, maybe what we ought to do, boys, is get you over to Hollywood and sort them out. Although but I wouldn't trust Harry with the girls. That's the problem.
No.
Now, tell LBC listeners, you attended a little ceremony yesterday, didn't you?
Yes, that's right. Yes. I came last year with my wife, Liz here, and just we were passing. We wanted to go to the Normandy beaches, and we saw the sign to the Pegasus Centre. So Pegasus Bridge, because we knew about that. So we went to the centre, and there, I must say, they made a little bit of a fuss of me. Showed us round, and they said, "Have you got the medal of
the Légion d'honneur?"
Yeah, that's right. And I said yes. It came through the post only a few weeks ago, which encouraged us to go to Normandy again, because I've not been back since Normandy. And but they said, well, you won't have had that presented yet. If you'd like to come back next year, we will arrange a presentation. And so I said yes, I would love that, because it's the sword area where I was on HMS Largs, and that's a wireless headquarters ship, a naval ship, that was responsible for organising landings and putting the troops ashore. And I spent the whole of the Normandy invasion period in the ship, working for the Navy, really.
And how many years young are you, Alec?
Now, I'm 94. I'm nearly 95.
So you've been given a medal at 94. It's not bad, is it?
Yeah, well, it was for 70 years ago. So I don't say it's a bit late because it's a great honour to have it. I mean, I'm very proud to wear it. It's a lovely medal in itself, but
well, it's looking tremendous. And can I offer you huge congratulations?
Yeah, well, thank you
for everything. Then
I shall wear it for all those that can't wear theirs at the moment.
Yes.
It ought to be.
I heard you speaking earlier, Laurie, and it isn't just your English that's good. Your French is rather good too, isn't it?
No.
Well, I tell you what, it's better than most Brits, and you're absolutely right about that. So you come back, do you come back to Ramble every year?
Almost every year since, well, I've been retired 30 years. I've been here most years.
Yes.
Yes.
So you spend all your birthdays in Romville?
I get into trouble when I go to Arnhem because that's my wedding anniversary.
And were you at Arnhem as well?
Yes, yes.
Goodness
yes,
me.
Yeah.
And how did Arnhem finish up for you?
I swam out, actually.
Did you?
Very proud of that. Yes. I got left behind.
You strike me as a man who was enormously proud of what all of you achieved those years ago.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yes. Well, we didn't achieve the objective, did we?
Well, in the end, we won the war, didn't we? But it was never going to be a seamless path.
Yes. But yes, well, it was dead lucky to be engaged in two of these sort of famous episodes.
D-Day is a giant amphibious operation. Yes, we've got the RAF bombing hell out of German positions. We've got the Royal Navy, of course, also pounding German positions, and we've got the parachute regiment and the glider pilots, and they're all doing their bit. But the biggest part of this operation are the landings on the beaches. There are 5 beaches. Behind me is Gold Beach. The others are Juno and Sword, and away to the west, the Americans had 2 beaches, Omaha and Utah. So it's Brits, Canadians and Americans, but 150,000 men being landed over the course of that one morning and subsequent day. So this is the scene of the action, and this was, of all the things that happened in the war, the thing that gave Churchill more heartache than anything. You see, he'd been First Lord of the Admiralty at the time we tried to force the Dardanelles against the Turks in 1915, the subsequent disastrous Gallipoli landings, and what Churchill feared is that D-Day would be Gallipoli on an even bigger scale. He struggled to sleep, he was irritable, he was ratty, it was his worst moment in the war. And yeah, there were places where troops did badly, in particular the Americans at Omaha, who came up against the division that had just come back from the Eastern Front, who had a well-defended position. And whilst we took casualties, D-Day itself was a success. We'd established a toehold. What we didn't realise on D-Day is it would take us months to move even a few miles.
It's like a bus going over the top of you, four of them going over the top of you.
Yeah.
And you see the lights behind them, and there's it just fading away.
Was the sea quite rough on D-Day?
It was quite rough, raining as well.
Yeah, yeah.
They took us off the Liberty boats.
Yep.
And dropped us down onto the other boats.
Yeah.
So we had to wait. Well, we had to queue up to get a boat to get ashore.
Did you?
Yeah, everybody wanted a boat to get ashore.
It was fishing, really.
How did you feel coming ashore?
Relieved.
Relieved.
Yeah. That's what we'd come for. We wanted to get ashore, but
yeah,
you know, we were shouting for them to come and pick us up, but we had to wait our turn, and we got it eventually, you know.
Were you apprehensive about coming ashore, or
no? Not really, no.
No,
we wanted to get ashore.
Well, you're about to go back onto the beach.
Yes, but it wasn't like this. Not a bit like this.
Wasn't it?
We landed this side of it. This side of Aramont. This is Aramont, isn't it?
Yes.
We landed this side of Aramont.
Yeah. Well, over towards the cliffs over there, yeah? Yeah. And then once you got ashore, you were kind of trapped for a month or two, weren't you, really? In terms of going forwards?
Well, we finished up in a field next to, it was 50th Division. We was 49th Division. 50th Division was already in the field when we got there. By the time we got ashore and we got settled down, it was dark. We dug our trenches as we'd been told to, and kept down for the night. next morning when we woke up, you could see the graves all round you. Previous lot has got a lot of German graves here.
Right, yeah.
Because they only buried them in shallow graves and left the boots showing. You know, they'd have their anti-tank guns all ready waiting for us.
Yeah.
We'd get knocked out, or those that did get knocked out.
Yeah.
And you either got killed or you didn't get killed.
And you've lived to tell the tale.
I'm still here.
You certainly are. Well, I hope you agree with me. There's some amazing testimonies there of action, of people's incredible fortitude. And as I said earlier, you know, it's nearly 3/4 of a century ago that these things happened. And I do think, you know, if any of you got the chance to go and meet a neighbour or an elderly relative, you know, particularly if you're from the younger generation, grab that opportunity, because wonderful though these people are, they're not going to be around forever. I love the comment in the clip, the glider pilot, Laurie Whedon, whose 95th birthday it was. And the way he said, well, I was dead lucky, really, to be involved in both D-Day and Arnhem. And that's how he looks at it. You know, 75 years on. He thinks he was very lucky. He was fortunate to be part of it. And I can see already on Facebook that there is quite a reaction here. Annabelle says, the bravery of these people, I just can't even begin to imagine how incredible these people are. Diana says, very moving, thank you. Natalie says, my granddad was Dutch resistant, World War II and then RAF. English side were all RAF, World War I and II. Much respect. John says, amazing respect for these World War II veterans. And there are a lot of messages coming in here. And a lot of you, you know, talking about your own relations, your own memories. And Normandy now is a place that people do go to visit. They go in huge numbers now, every year, to visit Normandy. It's actually a very beautiful place. Albeit parts of it, I think, do make you reflective and perhaps a little bit sad and a bit thoughtful about what the genuine sacrifice was made by some previous generations. Well, for one person, this Normandy trip was perhaps a bit sadder than for others, because her father, Major Christopher Hamilton, had died earlier this year, and he had landed on Gold Beach at Arromanches on D-Day, and he had put down as his last wish that he wanted to have his ashes scattered on that beach. And so there we were with the casket, and it was D-Day. This is what happened.
People should appreciate what they did for us as a country.
Major Christopher Alfred Hamilton, born in 1925.
His eulogy was read out by my brother-in-law, who's general in the army.
His flight was immediately employed in the Battle of for Caen against the 9th and 10th SS Panzer Divisions, losing 2,000 men in the first 36 hours of battle. He strongly believed that his life should have ended there, and that part of his life was etched in his mind forever. Hence why I guess he told me that when he passed away, he wanted some of his ashes scattered here.
I just had to do it for him. It was just something that he was so passionate about, you know, and feeling very humble.
Those we love don't go away. They walk beside us every day, unseen, unheard, but always near. Still loved, still missed.
Thank you, thank you. I was very close to him, and it hasn't been an easy time. My father had dementia, but now I feel today is going to be, he's free.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them. Well, I have to say, to be standing on Gold Beach, 73 years on, from the day when British troops came ashore with the ashes being scattered of one of the men who'd been there on that day with his daughter and family, was a really quite extraordinary thing to take part in. And I think it was very, very good of the family that they allowed us to record that for LBC and to share that with you. And I've been to lots of ceremonies of all kinds through my life, and I have to say that was something that was particularly poignant, something that I think I shall remember as long as I live. That's how powerful it was. Well, I hope that you found this last half hour interesting. No phone in, but we've had a few messages. But there is something about our past, about fighting for liberty and freedom and democracy for us and for the rest of Europe that matters. Whichever side of the argument you're on today, it matters, and these memories matter, and this generation are fading out fast, and I think we should treasure every word that they speak to us and that we record for posterity. This is LBC. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show. I'm back on Monday. Coming up at 10, it's Ian Collins, but up next, it's Clive Bull.
Thanks very much. So we have the legal hour coming up at 9. It's your chance for some free legal advice. Barrister Daniel Barnett will be here from Outer Temple Chambers to give you some legal advice, and we'll get his legal take as well on that shop that wants to call itself Singsbury's. Also, do you use plastic bottles? New figures reveal the huge number that we're getting.